The Jim and Terry Show, coming to you from the safety of the Hobbit Hole studio in our bunker, wondering about whether this is the end of the world as we know it. Our REM themed podcast series.
Run to the light.
There's a shout out to Bobby. Run to the light, look up, embrace the light. Okay, you were leaving the last podcast with a notion that you cannot have a precise or surgical response, a measured response to terror.
No, you can't, even if you wanted to, because the terrorists are going to hide themselves amongst innocent people. Here's what I think happened, and I may be wrong, but think about it for a minute. The atrocities that Hamas committed were unhuman, just off this world, and if you see the response of the United States and their government officials who have seen what has happened, and you hear the reports coming back from the people who witnessed it, it was just a horror show. You know, the Hamas went in there, targeted innocent people, didn't care if you were in a wheelchair, didn't care if you were a baby, decapitating babies, the whole bit.
They went into communities.
They went into communities,
found people on the streets
to cause horror. To cause horror, and here's why they did it, in my opinion. All of those rockets, and 5,000 rockets were launched from Gaza into Israel. Such a coordinated hit, too, where somehow they got past the knowledge of the powers that be in Israel, the United States, and other countries. They really sucker punched Israel. And they not only sucker punched, they made a point of making it as evil as possible. And I think there was a reason behind that. And this is the reason. Hamas doesn't care if they live or die. As a matter of fact, there's some sort of glory they get, 75 virgins or so. I can't remember what it is. They don't care about dying themselves. Hamas doesn't care. They also don't care if the Palestinians die. They care about one thing, as the elimination of Israel. The elimination of the Jewish race.
So civilian casualties is acceptable.
It's not only acceptable, it's just the price you're going to pay. So they did this knowing that Israel, which right now has 360,000 troops ready to go into Gaza, with some of the most sophisticated tanks and armor that you can possibly have. You got the United States and the biggest aircraft carrier in the world and their strike force in the Mediterranean heading towards Israel. What they want is Israel. They've provoked them. They've really got that hook around the nostril and is pulling Israel in. Israel has to eliminate Hamas. And Hamas is hiding amongst 2 million people in a 50-mile by 2-mile strip. Hamas wants that. They want Israel to come in full force. They're willing to die. They want them to come in full force to get the anger of the world. Look what they've done. And it's already shifting because they stopped humanitarian aid into Gaza. So now they're being condemned for that. They're being condemned for not allowing them to get
hydro,
power.
cutting off
and not providing
gas.
fresh water and the rest of it. So they're already being hated. This is Hamas's job. They've done it well.
To create hate.
To create hate, but to turn the world on Israel. And this is where your brother sort of comes in on the biblical end of humanity as we know it.
Are we in the last of the last days, I think was his opening statement. Are we in the last of the last?
I think it's a question that we need to ask, whether you're religious or not. I mean, eventually something's going to give. And you got unbelievable powerful bombs. Like I was thinking, okay, if you're going to do this, Israel, why not just that bomb that the United States dropped in Afghanistan?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that
Moab,
just boom, it's like an underground nuclear
bombs.
bomb, and just blow up all those tunnels. But of course, look who it would take with them.
Yep.
You know, the whole country. But something like this is going to happen, even to the point. I'll go so far as to say it's possible that Hamas has booby-trapped, not for the Israelis, yes, for them, but also their own state to create hate, to pull in Iran, Iraq.
Iran doesn't need to be pulled in. They're the instigators.
They're
of
the
this.
instigators. But I mean, to make them attack.
Right.
to make them literally put feet on the ground, and Russia saying, okay, well, geez, this is a great opportunity to do
Yes,
what we
while
need to
chaos is reigning elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I fear Zelensky must be, he's come out very strongly in favor of Israel, even though Netanyahu never bothered to visit Ukraine, and Zelensky is throwing his support behind Israel.
Yes, and I feel bad for Ukraine. That's a whole other thing because they're getting lost in this. But you talk about taking an opportunity. You got the United States where the GOP hasn't got a speaker. Doesn't have a speaker. They don't look like they're going to have one. That causes chaos in the world as well as in the United States. So you got that. You got a president that everybody's saying senile. He's sure stepping up right now, but
uniting the West.
Yeah, but they're saying that you got a war going on in Ukraine that's taken a lot of the United States military funds,
And a lot of the GOP do not support the war in Ukraine.
That's right. So I'm thinking Hamas said this looks like a real good time under the direction, I would say, probably of Iran. This is a real good time. Make your hit, because they're not going to be able to get the full support of the world. But again, I say Hamas did this knowing they were sacrificing their own lives and the Palestinian lives to get rid of Israel once and for all. And that will be the end of the world.
Okay, so just to rein it back into something more clinical and sterile, if that is even possible in the midst of atrocities, do you think Palestinian nationalism is gone now? Do you think that there's no hope in the near foreseeable future that there will be? I mean, we were close to seeing, I think, a two-state solution to the tension.
Never. I don't believe it's ever going to happen.
Okay.
I think Palestine has now been sacrificed by Hamas.
So there will be no Palestine.
There will be no Palestine. They're going to be eliminated in probably the next few weeks. I think. I may be wrong on this. I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but I think it was all set up to turn the world against Israel. I had a friend say once, "Why is everybody against Israel?" And I didn't answer correctly. And the reason everybody's against Israel, I believe, is because Israel is the chosen people of God.
Right, you have this religious interpretation of human history.
Oh, I know that's just mine.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm just saying that's where it comes from. There are a couple of comments. Number one for me is, if this is, as I think it was Senator Lindsey Graham who called it a religious war, well, Hamas might have invoked the word jihad, which is the holy war of Islam. On the other side, you've got the claims of Judaism, another Abrahamic faith. And then you've got Christianity, whose lot is tied to Israel as well, which is another Abrahamic faith. I penned a song that talked about religion as poison. And I'm going to throw that out there and say, extremism is poison. And I'll make that. I won't say religion is poison, although that was based on a Hitchens book and title. I'm going to say extremism. So how do we find that middle? Again, we talked about this all the time in politics. Where's the middle?
Well, it's so funny. I don't think you're going to find it. I don't have any hope in that.
Oh my gosh, this is a Tim Hortons donut. There is no middle.
Well, number one, Christianity really can't be compromised if you're going to stay to the teachings of Jesus Christ. It's him and him alone. But the Muslims always also believe there's Muhammad and there's only one prophet, and they believe that. The Jews are probably the most unreligious of all of them battling here. Because a lot of them are just, I remember a comedian saying, if we're chosen, please choose somebody else. To God, please choose somebody else.
Well, you do have orthodoxy in Judaism as well.
Well, you have that there, and they and only recently that's kind of come up, really, when the coalition governments of Israel came together to the far right, as you would call it, with the Orthodox religious beliefs in there.
So that's extremism. Orthodoxy is extreme.
So the pot's boiling. It's boiling, and you've got three religious beliefs that aren't going to change. And the only one that could really change it, in my opinion, of course, is the peace of Christ. That's my opinion. Or you can have if you don't believe, we'll cut your head off faith. Or you can have a faith that is based on, most of us don't believe in God faith.
Right. Well, I think at the core, any solution is going to have to be humanitarian. It's going to have to be going back to the fundamental values of what it means to be human, which is caring and compassionate, and not treating others as not human. When you dehumanize
that's right.
your enemy or those you don't like
Yeah.
or those you disagree with, that's where name calling becomes important. Because if you're willing to put a flag on your truck or your car that says F the Prime Minister, that's saying you're not far from these other manifestations.
Hate, to me, which I've observed, if you nurture hate and you work on hate, I believe it just opens the doors of every unclean spirit can possibly be. And you see the ultimate of that in the brutality that a man can do to another man. Whether it's in Rwanda, where they were butchering people in the streets with machetes, the hell that we've seen man leash on his fellow man is hate at its ultimate level of, I guess, opening the doors to demonic flow. So I don't even think man has the right to say anything about a righteous hate. You know what I mean? Or even a righteous anger.
No, I don't think there's
we
anything.
need to.
There's nothing righteous.
No, and that yeah.
I'm saying if you're willing to make people not human, it's saying more about you and your belief system.
Yeah.
So don't dehumanize. And that means even as the bombs are falling and Israel is doing a response.
Well, it's like Christ said, do good to your enemies.
Yeah.
Look after them.
Well,
like if you
it's hard
capture
to
them,
perceive
feed them.
what's going on back and forth as being loving your enemies by anyone.
Well, that's, yeah.
So there is vengeance,
Yeah.
or there is retaliation, or there is hate that is unbridled.
And genocide.
Ultimately, will it be a race war, and which will invoke the term genocide? I don't know, and I sure hope we're not in the stages, the last of the last days. In a biblical sense, I'm aware of what that means, but I'm hoping give peace a chance might prevail, and I'm not sure how.
All we are saying
Or Imagine
is
by
give
John
peace
Lennon.
a chance.
There's lots of tunes that can apply in wisdom to get us out of this thing, but what hell will we go through to get to the other side? The Jim and Terry Show. Look in the light, Bob.
Yeah.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.